Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Anthony Chaffee here again with another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Logan Sneed, who is a cancer survivor of, I believe, glioblastoma. And so he's joining us today to tell us his story, which I'm very appreciative of. Thank you very much for joining us, Logan.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited.
Yeah, great. So if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, and feel free to interrupt me too as we're kind of going through this little story. But yeah, man, I grew up playing all sports. I was, MVP on the 6A high school basketball team, district MVP, college basketball opportunities. Life was like perfect. It was like, man, dreams are coming true. And I ended up going to college with a girlfriend at the time because I knew I was like, okay, I'm not playing major D1. So like, I'm just going to go to school with this girlfriend. Sure. Okay. So I did that. And a year goes by. Great opportunity in school. Half a year goes by and I was on spring break with my girlfriend and we grew up in the same city. So like we just, went from school back home, stay with our families back and like, repeated that. And it was a spring break and I was like, you know what? I feel like it's a good time of the year. I'm going to start like getting super, super lean, right? I'd always been into fitness and all this stuff, but I was in such a like 4-year bulking stage. It was like a moment where somebody was like, yo, you need to gain weight. When I heard that, I gained weight. I think I hit 200 pounds at most one time. And so I got super, super big. And then that was a moment I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start getting lean. So what happened is I took a picture in the mirror of like a before photo. And then I was going to go to the gym right after that to work out anyway. That was like part of my routine. So I started going to the gym and I decided to FaceTime my girlfriend at the time just to like, randomly FaceTime her and surprise her and just say, hey, thinking of you. Hope you have a great spring break. Like, good to see you, whatever. And I've never done this and never FaceTimed and drived at the same time. So as I'm driving, I had started like slurring my words as if I was like drunk, but I wasn't drunk. And she started kind of laughing because she thought it was a joke. And, as this is going by, like, I kind of like lost my mind where I was like I tried talking, I just couldn't talk. It's the weirdest feeling ever. And so as that's happening, I just started seizing right there, like as I'm driving my car. And so I drove 60 miles an hour unconscious, and she's watching the seizure happen. And I was like one left turn away from going on the busiest, the fastest highway in the country. It's 85 mile an hour speed limit. And so I didn't go on there and I went and drove into a ditch. And so it was an absolute miracle. There was no injury. There was no damage at all. And it was just going like, boom, 60 miles an hour straight into this ditch. I didn't even hit a tree. And so she knew where I was going. So she called the ambulance and was like, hey, he's going to this gym. This is where he started. This is where he's going. So follow this destination route. And they came. They had to break into the car because obviously it was locked and I was by myself. So I got into the ambulance and I go to the hospital. When I get to the hospital, they had kind of asked my parents. My parents showed up and she showed up and was like, okay, is he on drugs? They were like, I don't think so. Is he on, I don't know, alcohol? Is he taking alcohol? Is he on like weed, whatever? And so they did all these tests and they're like, yeah, it looks like nothing's there. We don't know. And right before we were about to leave, one of the guys was like, hey, like, one of the doctors said, hey, we should get an MRI because this is like our last option to figure out what's happening. So I got an MRI and I like brain problems never crossed my mind, like just growing up. Now I will say this, like I had a lot of physical trauma, like in all my sports. I was always that type where I never really broke a wrist, right? I never really broke an arm. I just had very, very bloody, gory type injuries. And it was so bad that it was like you can see it right here, scar right here. I've had like neck stuff. I mean, it's just a lot of gory stuff. So it never crossed my mind that I'd be getting an MRI to see like what's going on in the brain. So I wasn't worried. They came back and said, hey, like there's something going on in his brain. Okay, we can't tell you what's happening, but you guys should see a neurologist. So next day I see a neurologist, and the neurologist said, hey, like this is a little bit serious. Like, I don't know what this is, but it looks like there is a mass, and he couldn't categorize it. And he said, you guys need to go see a neurosurgeon. So we go see a neurosurgeon like the next day, and still in my mind, I still had not fathomed like what was going on. So it just still wasn't that big of a deal. And so I live in downtown Austin, and we go see a neurosurgeon downtown Austin. And I go in there, and I was like, or the surgeon said, hey, Logan, it's good to meet you. Just want you to know that, like, this is basically a perfect egg that's in your brain right now. It's a perfect egg, the size of it, the looks of it, everything. And he said, we're going to have to get this removed. And it's your decision. If we do get it removed, you won't speak or hear again. If we don't, you could end up dying. So it's one of the two. And I was like, whoa, what the, like I was just like shot back, because I was like, okay, you don't speak or hear again, or you die. And in all honesty, it seems like they're both death, right? So it's like, it was a very hard, like, type of a moment to decide that. And so we ended up leaving, and my mom, as we're walking out, my mom turned around and says, like, we're not listening to that neurosurgeon. He's not confident. We're not going to work with the guy. And he even said himself, he said, we got to have this done as soon as possible. And he said, but I'm going to be going on vacation for 2 weeks. So whenever I get back from vacation, I think we can then look at this. And I was like, wait, what?
What?
It was so weird. And my mom was like, we're going to find somebody better. And she was like, we're going to find hopefully the best. So my uncle, and this is all going to link together. My uncle, he's like the CFO or CEO of Ross Perot's company in Dallas, Texas. And Ross Perot, he ran for president in the United States, and he had donated millions and millions of dollars to MD Anderson Cancer Center. So my parents called Uncle Fred, who's my uncle, and said, hey, Uncle Fred, like, do you happen to know anybody who knows anybody, that could potentially be hopefully one of the best brain surgeons in the world? And he was like, let me just talk to Ross Perot. So he talked to Ross Perot, guy who ran for president. And he was like, yeah, let me make a call. So he calls into MD Anderson and says, hey, we have a serious situation. I need the best brain surgeon that you possibly could think of that you guys have. Okay. And this needs to happen quick. They were like, okay. So they call in, I don't know if you know Dr. Raymond Sawaya at all, but like apparently he is known here in the United States as like one of the best in the country, one of the best in the world. And so we end up going there like 24 to 48 hours later, go to MD Anderson. It's like, I mean, this is all within like just a few days, right? Like on top of the world to then boom, I'm now talking to one of the best brain surgeons in the world. And this is just such a weird moment. And so I go in there and I say, hey, Dr. Sawaya, I was like, look, we're just going to cut to it. Okay. Am I going to speak or hear after this surgery? That's all I need to know. He was like, yeah, of course, dude. He's like, yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I was like, what? I was like, the other guy did not say that. Yeah. He's like, yeah, no. He's like, if I'm doing this surgery, don't worry about it. He's like, just follow my lead, do what you need to do, and you'll be fine. It's like, oh, okay. Sure. Nice. And then he was like, yeah, but we have to have brain surgery tomorrow morning, like fast.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. So he said, but you're gonna have to stay here from, I think I got there at like, it was like 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. maybe. So we left at like 4 or 5 a.m. and drove all the way over there. And he's like, you're gonna have to stay here the whole day. We're gonna be doing some very intense type training to just kind of like see like, how you're operating. And I was like, okay. So I go there, and it was so like, you probably know what I'm talking about, but I mean, it wasn't like it was physically intense. It was more like emotionally and mentally intense, where it was like, okay, touch your nose, and like, okay, can you write out like, what you see here and what you see here and like all these type of things? And I was like, yeah. And they were moving me from one room to another, to another, to another. And it was so intense. I ended up fainting. I passed out, and the guy caught me just because of how overwhelmed I was from like how fast things have changed. So that night we ended up going out to eat to just to kind of prepare for the brain surgery. It was more of just like a hangout type moment, and the next morning we woke up at like 4:45 or 5 a.m. or something. We had to go there right away. So the surgery was early, and I go in there, and I'm sure you may know what I'm talking about, but like for those that don't know, like, when you go to like, let's say a church or a funeral, right? There's like the aisle that people walk through, and there's different rows. And so as I'm walking in, it's like pitch black dark. Like it's super early in the morning. There's a family over here, family over here, family here, family here, family here. And these are all different families of different surgeries or different situations. And like, I was like walking through, I was like, whoa, this is so weird. Like this family's crying, this family's sleeping, this family's like, freaking out. Like it was super weird. So I go in, they put me on the stretcher thing, and they bring in, the pastor, they sign all the waivers, like they bring in the prayers, like all this stuff. And like for you guys, like as far as like a surgeon goes, it may not seem like that big of a deal, but for like people who are just like, I'm getting brain surgery, this is so wild, Yeah. So like it was, and I'll never forget, like, going in, and they, the surgery was 7 hours, and they woke me up in the middle of the surgery to ask questions. Cause if I couldn't speak or hear, in the middle of that surgery, then they'd have to cut it off short, So they drag me in there, and then you go in, like, and I know that, but like people who don't know what it's like to get a surgery, it's not just you, or it's not just, Dr. Sawai, it's like, it's a team. So I go in, and there's like a team lined up, and, everyone's got their masks on, their body suits on. And it was like one of these like wowing moments, it's kind of like it's like a football game, right? Where it's like, you got your offensive coordinator team, like up in the press box, and like you got the coach right there, and like front line, like I'm on the field basically. Like it's pretty wild. So I go through the surgery, and as the surgery is happening, they woke me up to ask me, like, who's president, like, which high school did you go to, where are you from, like all this type of stuff. And so yeah, and then obviously I can still speak in here. So the surgery went perfectly well. I mean, perfectly well. They removed 100% of the mass / tumor. And it was a perfect egg. So after the surgery, I was out of the hospital in, I think, less than 48 hours. I mean, it was just a very, very perfect surgery. He was like, yeah, whole thing's removed. Like, it's all good. I mean, like, we'll keep you updated. And I was like, cool, sounds good. And I thought it was like a cool, just, badass story to just go tell, like, oh, I had a brain surgery, but yeah, I'm all good, And so, we end up, going back home. And then I think a week later, we came back for the diagnosis. And I still did not think this was like bad. Like I thought it was just cool. Like I was like, yeah, this is cool. Sure. Yeah, let's just go hear what they got to say. That's fine. Yeah. So I go in there, and the lady comes in, and she was like, hey, so this is a stage 4 glioblastoma brain tumor. And I didn't know what that was. My mom, my dad knew what that was apparently. And she was like, yeah, this is about the worst cancer that you could possibly get. And that was a moment that I was like, what is she talking about? And I didn't really know. And so that's my mind just started like racing. I was like, cancer, what? Like, what? And so she said, yeah, I mean, this is like the worst tumors that you can be diagnosed with. And the way that she diagnosed it was just honestly like so terrible. She said, this is the worst tumor that you can get. She said, your life expectancy is a 1 to 10 year period. We'll try the chemo, we'll try radiation. That's all we could really do for you. But yeah, I mean, that's really about it. Any questions? I was like, yeah. Oh, I was like, I mean, that's it. Like chemo and radiation. I mean, like I already knew that since I was 3 years old. Like, is there nothing more? And in my mind, I was just like, wait, they're a neuro-oncologist. Like this is like top 5 most difficult jobs in the world. And you just said chemo and radiation and I'll be dead. Okay. Like I get it. There's some situations that are like inoperable, like inoperable tumors. Right. But like, seems a little bit different. So I was just so distraught of what was happening. And my dad was like, hey, like, is there any like thing that he should eat or I don't know, not eat or do or not do that could maybe like just help this? And she was like, no, it's not going to have any correlation positively or negatively. And he was like, so like, I don't know, if he just went to go eat McDonald's burgers all day and then had like a bunch of beers and just, didn't really care about his health, is that fine? Or she's like, yeah, again, that's not going to help. It's not going to hurt.
Jesus.
So, I mean, that's all we can do is just going to be chemo and radiation. And then I was like, that's where I just kind of like, I had like 100 pounds of weight put on my back. So walked out of there and like, I had like text after text after text of like, hey, what's the diagnosis? How's it going? How's it going? And it just was like, honestly, one of the most difficult things to just go and tell people that are very close to me, like, yeah, she just said I'll be dead. I mean, like, it was just so heart-wrenching to even just go through that. So 24, 48, like, a couple days go by and I had really no hope. Like, I was just like, yeah, I'm dead. So she said, I'm dead. Right. And so this just kept kind of accumulating and I was at like an all-time high. Like I literally didn't do a thing. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm like, I'm just taking up space. Right. I'm just like this dead zombie walking around. So why not just die, So my parents were kind of doing research and they didn't tell me that they were doing research. And it was like a week later, I think, I had a friend who was kind of a mentor of mine all the way through high school. And he said, hey, Logan, like would love to go paddleboarding with you in Austin at Lady Bird Lake and just kind of like, chat it up. And I was like, yeah, sure. What else am I going to do? So I go paddleboarding and this is, what are we on? Shoot, I got to go look. I think it's like 7 or 8 years since all this happened.
Wow.
He had said, hey, have you heard of the ketogenic diet? And I was like, never heard of it. I was like, what's that? And he was like, man, so I just got back from Hawaii and in like follow this specific diet since they're like, there's like generation live over there in Hawaii. And is that better?
Yeah. You just cut out for a bit. So you were saying that your friend asked you about the ketogenic diet and mentioned Hawaii.
Yeah. He said that like, in Hawaii, the population, like in some of these like very isolated nature areas, they've just always done this like generation after generation. And he was like, I went there, I hung out with them and they told me about this. And they said how, they said it could like, it was discovered by curing seizures. Mm-hmm. It was it shown to treat anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's, and then even potentially shrink tumors and prevent tumor regrowth. And, a little bonus is potentially losing body weight, losing body fat. And I was like, really? I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, yeah, you should look into it. It's got some pretty interesting studies. It's decently new as far as like social, like in society or whatever goes, but you should look into it. And I was like, okay. So that night I stayed up till like probably like 2 a.m. and I just researched keto diet. And I was like, wow, it can help lose body fat, cure seizures, prevent tumor regrowth, and like potentially shrink tumors. I was like, this is wild. I was like, I'm going all in with this. I was like, I don't care if this thing doesn't work. If it's a bunch of, BS, like that is fine. I'm definitely going to do this. So I got super excited just because like I had nothing left in my life. And I went from like this extreme, like carb loading, like gym bro to like complete, like I'm not having any carbs. So I did a complete 180. And as time goes by, like I started getting a lot of hope back. I started feeling like this is like, oh man, this is awesome. I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, it's not coming back. You know what? Forget that doctor. And I started like really just getting super excited. And I showed this on Instagram and I saw crazy results. Like I'm talking like I went from a bulkier to now like insanely lean. Like it was so lean that my Instagram started going viral. And people were like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? And I showed my chemo pills and like that I was in radiation, and people thought it was just this like whole fake story because they're like, you just can't, like, how are you going to go through this stuff and see these results? It just doesn't match.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's just like keto stuff here. It's like, I don't know. It's just, I'm eating this, and like people got very fascinated. So I was like, I'm just going to show, like, I'm just going to sell this keto recipe menu book thing, whatever. And I started doing that. People were like, well, yeah, I want to try it. And it started like really taking off. And so I had always actually wanted to drop out of college and like do my own thing from like literally from day one. But my mom was like, yeah, you got to, build something up to make an income that you could live on your own. And then you can do that. And I was like, okay. So as this was going by, I showed my girlfriend, I was like, and at the time I thought it was a ton of money. I was like, oh my gosh, look, I was like, I made $200 today. And then like the next day I was like, I made $400. And then I'll never forget, I was like, I made $500 today. Look at this. And I was like, so excited. And she never could like register like what was actually happening. And so I was like, look. I was like, I'm going to build this thing up. I'm going to drop out of college. I'm going to focus on this. You stay here, and like I'll still stay here on campus. It's not that big of a deal. And then once you're graduated, and I am too, let's go travel the world. Like, let's go live life. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And she's like, whoa, okay. All right, yeah, we'll talk about it another time. So I was like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. So like as time goes by, this thing starts really, really ramping up, and I will never forget. I dated this girl for like 5 years, right? I'm well beyond past, this whole thing that I had. But at the time, it was just like heart wrenching. I woke up with this long text, basically a breakup text. Mm-hmm. I never saw the girl again, never heard from her at all. And I was like bawling my eyes out. And I was like, man, this is like the only, like, because I was so focused on my business. I never really had college friends. It was just me and her, basically. Mm-hmm. So I told my mom, and I was like, Mom, look, I'm making, a couple $100 a day. I want to get out of here. Like, she just broke up with me over a text. I can't get a hold of her. And she was like, I'll be there tomorrow morning. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to get you out of there. And I was like, all right, cool. So literally within 24 hours, everything was packed up. I moved out, went to go live with my family for probably like 6 months or so. And then I don't know if have you been to Austin?
Just once. Yeah. Last year I went there for a conference.
Okay. So there's a sub place where like Google, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, they've all got offices. It's called The Domain. So I lived there, and then I ended up living on my own at The Domain. I was like 20 years old. I had no friends. I was growing on social media, but I really had no friends. And I was kind of like, I don't know, socially, it was kind of weird for me to be able to go out and be like, oh yeah, hey, Dr. Anthony. Well, I mean, for you, it's not weird because you definitely go and treat brain tumor patients, but like, going to random people and be like, oh yeah, I'm a brain cancer survivor, or, I had a brain tumor last year and it was bad. Right. But can we be friends? Like, it was a weird, like, I just couldn't do it. So I was very isolated, and I started getting very emotionally, like, I don't know, emotionally like out of place. And then as time goes by, this whole keto thing on Instagram, like nobody was talking about this. This was 8 years ago. Like not a single person on Instagram was talking about the keto diet, like at all. Like maybe one or two people that were maybe like doctors, if that. And I started getting serious amount of hate online of saying like, you made up this diet. It's just completely fake. Like you're scamming people, or like your story is fake. You just made up a story and now you're trying to make money. Like it was so bad that I ended up almost quitting everything I did and just like, you know what, I'm going to go back to college. And so then as time goes by, like I kept pushing and things took off. And funny enough, like the guy who told me about keto had always been my mentor, and I had like looked up to the guy. And so like, obviously I want to listen to everything he has to say. And he said, hey, let's have a chat. I'd love to talk business. And I was like, okay, sure. What do you want to talk about? So we go and we chat, and he was like, yeah, I would love to join your business. And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah. How do you want to go about this? And I was 20. I didn't know what I was doing. And he was like, yeah, so give me 40%, you'll take 60, and we'll like really grow this thing. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So we go in, we sign like I didn't have a lawyer. I was 20 years old. Like we got his lawyer and sign all this stuff. And a year goes by, and the business started really taking off. And I was only getting a hold of him maybe like once a month. He went to go live in Cape Town, South Africa. I was putting in my blood, sweat, and tears to this every single day. And the type of like value that he gave me was more of like, here's how to save money than it is to make money. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, like, it got so bad as time went by, and I ended up having to like get rid of him. And it was such an emotional talk of like, okay, I looked up to you my whole life. Now I got to get rid of you. And, I kind of just told him, I was like, look, like you're already very, very set off for life. Like you're very wealthy. You've had a lot of retirement funds, or he has had like a lot of money from his family as well. And I was like, look, do you want me to buy you out at 40%, or do you want to just cut this off and like life goes on as brothers. And he's like, yeah, you have to buy me out. And I was like, wow. So I ended up having to buy him out. So I literally lost like all my money that I basically had made. I had to kind of restart at square one. And so that was a very hard moment. And then I actually had this guy who kept messaging me on Instagram. He was like, hey, we'd love to like work with you. We'd love to be part of your business and like all this stuff. And I was like, look, dude, it's not going to work. Okay. I've got somebody else I'm dealing with. I don't even know you. It looks like you're in Dublin, Ireland. Like it's just not going to work. And he kept coming back. He kept coming back. And I'm talking, he kept coming back once a week for 6 months straight. Like, and he didn't tell me what he was going to give to me. He showed me what he was going to give to me. And so one day I was like, all right, look, I was like, this guy's put in more work. And I've said no every time, paid him $0 than this guy who I'm paying 40% of the business. And he hasn't done anything, you know? So I was like, okay, I'm going to give this guy a shot. I gave him a shot. Now we've worked together for 6 years now, and it's been absolutely amazing. We've now built, I went from like, you know, coaching people in the keto space to now coaching health and life coaches how to build and scale their coaching business. So we've helped thousands of coaches do that. And I wrote my book, Thank You Cancer, about my journey overcoming brain cancer. Do public speaking. I do podcasts like this. And yeah, it's changed my life. And for the better, I'm tumor free. So I get my MRI actually, I think in a month. There's nothing there, nothing to show. So yeah, I mean, it's all good. I don't want to say all good, like, oh, it's not a deal, but you know, it's all happened for a reason. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's a fantastic story. I'm really glad to hear that to see that you're doing so well. So you said there's 8 years ago that you got your first diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then so since then, so presumably you completed a course of chemo and radiation, and then since then you never had a recurrence.
No, I haven't had a tumor reoccurrence at all. There's nothing there. Like the whole thing was like fully removed. And the weird thing is that you may be able to answer this. I don't know, but like I've talked to another like neuro-oncologist like outside of the doctor's office, and I've talked to another surgeon, and they were like, wait, it was fully removed. And I was like, yeah, it was 100% removed. Like that's what they said. And they were like, but they said it was a GBM tumor. And I was like, yeah, that's what they said. They're like, okay, this is like either a 1 in a million, or they've like overdiagnosed it or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, but that's what it was. So yeah, it hasn't come back. I did keto for, I still do like on and off keto because I did lose a good amount of weight. I gained some weight back. I've gotten my testosterone up and like a lot of different things. But I did keto, like I'm talking like very, very strict keto for about 5.5 to 6 years. I did 1 meal a day. I did 1 meal a day for a whole year. I did what else? Yeah, I didn't even have dairy. Like, and I don't think dairy is horrifically bad. I just never like I listened to what Dr. Berg said. I listened to what like all these other doctors had said. And I did I've done a 5-day fast, like just straight water. I've even done, I still do like 16 to 18 hour fasting daily. So, yeah.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor at Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing with GBM is, I mean, you can take the whole thing out. And I mean, I guess the whole idea with GBM is that even if you take the whole thing out, and even if you do like a lobectomy, like, so if it's in like, you know, the anterior portion of the temporal lobe, or it's in like, you know, one of the frontal lobes or something like that, you could even do like a lobectomy and get the whole thing out and get huge margins, and these things still come back, you know, and that's, you know, there's sort of two sort of theories with this sort of thing, which is, you know, is this just a body of cells here and it sort of spreads and maybe get some like invisible fingers out, and maybe it sort of metastasizes and things like that, or is there a disease process going on in the brain and this is how it manifests, but there's other areas that are going to pop up as well. They've even done things like hemispherectomies, where they've taken the whole, hemisphere out of someone's brain, and with a sort of multifocal GBM, and then all of a sudden it's popping up on the other side as well. So it is very, very rare that it wouldn't come back. And so we have patients that even when we get, a gross total resection meaning that we get everything that we can see, but you assume that there's going to be still little cancer cells and things like that you can't see, and you don't want to take as much native healthy brain. You want to take as little native healthy brain as you can, except in areas like the frontal lobe, where you can be a bit more aggressive and take a bit more native brain to try to get more of those cancer cells, right? So it's like if you take like a melanoma out, you don't just take the spot out, you take like a big wide margin around it, and that's more likely to get all these little cells that may have spread into the tissue. And that's sort of the idea, with all cancers, but obviously in the brain, it's much more difficult to do that, and because you don't want to just be taking out big chunks of the brain. There's only those little spots that you can do that. But even then, even if you take out a very, very large section, it comes back, and then it keeps coming back, and they use chemo and radiation to try to slow it down. But it is termed a terminal illness. It is termed a non-survivable cancer. It's called fatal, and so that's. It is the exception, to not have it come back. But that's something that we're seeing more and more of in case studies like yourself, where you have somebody who just does intensive keto, and it's the people that do it more intensively that have better results, as you'd expect if this is something that actually works. There's a case series and even studies and even randomized controlled trials with ketogenic metabolic therapy and GBM specifically, and a bunch of other cancers, but GBM specifically. And they find that, the tighter your control, the better, obviously. And there's even Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. They actually use this for their cancer patients and their GBM patients, but it's usually like as like a second or third line treatment. Like they've have recurrent tumors, after surgery and chemo and radiation. It comes back again. They're back on chemo again. They get another dose of radiation. Maybe they do another debulking, and they just sort of do that. And they're like, okay, well, why don't we try this as well? And even then, it still has a very positive effect for people. And in the case series that they published, I think they had like 15 patients. Everyone was still alive that went on it, except for like the people that couldn't stay on it. And so they one had been a vegetarian and stayed did good keto for sort of 1.5 to 2 years, and then just said, I can't deal with this lifestyle. It's not working for me. I just want to go back to eating the way I normally do. And unfortunately he died within the year, but his tumor had been shrinking and had been shrinking just with the diet. And then all of a sudden, he stopped the diet, and boom, it came back. And the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's brilliant. He's a professor at Boston College. He was formerly at Yale, and he's shown that cancer cells really feed on glucose. And that was actually shown by a Nobel Prize winner named Otto Warburg 70 years ago. That cancer cells have damaged mitochondria, so they need more glucose to run, and they have a higher metabolic rate. So they require 400 times the amount of glucose to run than normal cells. And so if you go onto like a ketogenic diet, it just limits the amount of available energy, and so these things can starve out. And so that's something I've been doing as well. I've been looking into more as well. And I'm trying to get a study going in my hospital as well to do this with bigger numbers, because right now the biggest study is like 24 patients or something like that, and so obviously you need like hundreds to really see something.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I've also so I've talked to Thomas Seyfried, and that's one of the doctors who was like, yeah, what, like, how is this fully removed? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. They said, but yeah, no. it makes total sense. As far as like, what was I going to say? Yeah. So there was a guy, his name is Greg Cantwell. I don't know if you've heard about this guy, but he had a worse tumor than I did. Like it was so bad. And he got it. I don't know. I can't remember if he got it fully removed. I don't remember, but he did. He was part of the Duke study for keto. And he did like very, very intense therapeutical keto for like, I think 2 years. And I did mine for like 6. Right. And it's not that it's not that I don't do keto. I still do it on and off. And he basically, which is kind of wild, like I'm very health focused. So like quality of food, like where it's from, like all this type of stuff. And after 2 years, he just went back to like regular, like, I mean, not like unhealthy, just eating a bunch of crap, but like, you know, he'll have like, I don't know, pizza and beer on a Sunday night for football, right? Or like, oh, okay, cool. Let's go get like a salad and chicken, whatever, for the weekday, right? So it's just like regular, like probably a 60-40 health thing. And he's been fine for like, I think 30 years now. Jeez. It's super wild. And they gave him like, I think they gave him like a year. They said, yeah, like you only got a year. And now it's been like 30 years and he's still fine. And I don't want to follow what he's doing, obviously, but like, you know, he's, yeah, it's super interesting. I have no idea, but yeah, I mean, like, as far as like the keto stuff goes, very, very powerful. It's something that, you know, changed my life. I mean, it not only changed my life, saved my life, it helped me make a business. So, yeah, it's very, very, so.
Yeah. Well, it's something that, you know, the data is actually building, you know, in specifically for cancer and even just for GBM. And, you know, like I think there's probably like 24 human trials out at the moment, and there's probably another dozen in the works, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And a number of other types of cancer have tons of studies as well. And they show really, really good results also. So it's something that I think that, you know, has the potential to really crack this case open and really allow people to lead normal lives, more normal lives, or even survive without, you know, this massive burden of treatment and chemo and things like that they sometimes have, and sometimes doesn't work. And obviously with GBM, it's considered, you know, terminal, you know, and the quoted literature is that without treatment, it's 3 months. And with full treatment, with resection, chemo, radiation, it's 15 to 18 months. And on average. And so, you know, just being able to get more human trials out and more people like yourself and your story out there to get people and to sort of get the knowledge base out there that, hey, this is actually worth trying. I think that hopefully we're going to be able to actually knock this back and not have this be a terminal, you're going to die. I mean, I hate that sort of thing anyway, like what your oncologist said to you. I've heard people say that before, and it really bothers me, especially when I've seen patients that come in and, you know, they say that they ask their oncologist, they ask their doctor, like, hey, is there anything I can do? You know, one of the first things I hear when I'm giving somebody this horrible diagnosis, they always say, is there anything I can do? What can I do to affect this? Right. And other doctors will say, like, you know, nothing, don't worry about it. Just live your life, enjoy your life. And I think they mean it. They have good intentions by saying that, like saying, hey, you know, enjoy yourself, have pizza, have beer, like enjoy yourself. You don't have to limit, you know, but to the patient, to you, it's like you said, it's just, you know, put this massive weight on your back, on your shoulders. And it's just this sense of defeat that you have. It's just like, this is out of my control. There's nothing I can do about this. I'm going to die. It's just a matter of time. I think that is the most defeating thing that you can do to someone. And so I always get very mad about that. And I said, no, absolutely. There's a lot you can do. Of course it matters what you do. You know, if you eat crap and do drugs and smoke cigarettes and drink beer, like, of course that's going to make things worse. You know, if you are just the healthiest version that you can be, your immune system is going to work better. Your immune system fights these things, and your body being healthy is going to be able to weather chemo and radiation better as well. And you're going to be more robust and strong to fight this off. So of course that matters. I mean, well before we get into, ketogenic diets, of course this matters. And, and you sort of see people's like eyes sort of like lift up a bit, like, oh, hey, I have a bit of control now. And I think that's one of the most important things in people's lives, is having control over their lives.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when you feel like you can't, like when somebody acts like as if they not own you, but it's like, you will be dead. Like this is like, that's like almost like another, like as if it's like they're a god in a way. Right. And it's hard to say like, oh, well, you know what, doctor, like I'm going to go figure it out. It's like, okay, they just studied their whole life for this stuff and you don't know jack squat. And like having that ability to say that is just like nearly impossible. So I definitely know what you're talking about. It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see you're doing so well. I'm really glad to see that you're helping other people with it as well, and telling your story, because that's going to, other people are going to see this and they're going to say, well, hey, maybe there's something I can do. And maybe there's someone that they know, or someone that, their family knows that may be going through this, and this is going to, give them hope and at least give them something that they can try and something that they do. So I thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And one last thing too, is like doctors are they can get a lot of bad rep, a lot of like getting hated on, right, in one way or another. And like, I can understand both sides. It's like, obviously doctors trying to help, but then it's like people want hope, and it's hard. There's another situation, and this is a moment that really opened my eyes. And I forget what had happened exactly, but I think I had like some sort of, what was it? I can't remember if I had like a pink eye or something. I forget what it was. And I got in contact with this holistic doctor, and she has been known as like one of the best. And I got on the call with her. It was me, her, and my parents. And I told her about what was happening. I was like, yeah, this is what's, I don't know. I got like, it was something weird. And she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, what, okay, no, okay, this is not good. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, this is definitely a sign that your tumor is coming back. This is not good. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, these are signs right now that this is not good. And it just kept getting worse and worse of like, like, it's like, all right, geez, I mean, just say it's back. Like, I mean, it's not hard. Right. And so like, it was very weird. And after that call, I had called the Greg Cantwell guy, and I was like, hey, look, this holistic doctor just said that like, this is a huge sign that something's happening. And I was like, have you heard about this? Like, does this make any sense to you? And he was like, no. He's like, in my 30, he's like, I'm not a doctor, but in my 30 years of being a brain cancer survivor, never heard that. So I got on the phone with my neuro-oncologist, and I was like, hey, have you heard that this is like, again, I totally forget what it was. I can't remember. I'll have to ask my parents, but like, I was like, hey, is this meaning a tumor is coming back? And he was like, no, I've never heard of that. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Sure. All right. Well, that's good. And it kind of where I'm going with that is that like, she is a doctor. She's a holistic doctor, right? So she's not just this like lady who just starts making up things that she, acts like she knows. But it opened my mind. And again, if you look at like one surgeon, look at another. Like this guy said it's not going well. This guy said it was. Right. This guy said, hey, that's not a sign at all. This lady was like, yeah, this is a huge sign. And I'm going with that is then like everybody is trying to figure it out. Okay. Whether you're a patient, whether you're a doctor, I don't care who you are, like everybody is trying to figure it out. And if people on here are like, if they are a cancer patient or if they do know somebody, it's like, yeah, okay, doctors know probably 90% more than what you know as far as getting close to what the solution or your problem is. But don't think that if a doctor says, yeah, you're going to be dead, like don't think in your mind that like they 100% have the answer to exactly that. And I say that because like there are things outside of that doctors may have never even discovered. That's why they're doing research every day. Right. And then again, we haven't even talked about artificial intelligence. to find that answer, right? So it's like a whole nother topic that like is just so out there. So again, what I'm saying is like everybody is just trying to figure it out. And if people can look at it like that, I think that's where like the being a patient and being a doctor, like that sort of perspective, I think can bring them together and give the patients some hope and give the doctors some, more of like a not hate in a way, to hopefully, find that answer. But yeah, so.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point,
Yeah.
and when in doubt, get a second opinion, because, not everyone knows everything, and some they could get it wrong. And like you say, and also, surgeons are not surgeons are not surgeons. There absolutely are better or worse surgeons. And when it comes to something like your body in general, but your brain in particular, don't mess around. Try to get the best person that you possibly can, and because it can make a big difference. I mean, there's certain things that most people can do and do very, very well, but when you're getting into the real intricacies of these sorts of surgeries, you really want someone who's just like the best of the best, if you can ever get them, if you can. Not everyone has access, but if you're able to, just and always, if you're not happy with something, it's not necessarily that the person is out to get you or trying to be a jerk. Like, you may just have horrible bedside manner, like your neuro-oncologist, and just have no sense about how to actually, give bad news to people and talk about these things. But you can talk to other people and just say, hey, what do you think? Is this as bleak as it sounds? If someone says, look, I'm sorry, but this is what we see, then it's like, okay, well, at least I have more information and things like that. Or it could be that you get someone, like the different various neuro-oncologists, like Dr. Hugh from Cedars-Sinai, who's like, yeah, no, there's a lot that we can do. You can get in my trial. We can do ketogenic metabolic therapy and things like that. So there's always options.
Yeah.
Logan, well,
right.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, last question, like poliovirus study, like what's the update on that?
On poliovirus?
Yeah, there's a 60-minute documentary that just came out about injecting poliovirus into GBM patients.
Oh yeah, I've heard peripherally about that, but I haven't actually looked into it.
Okay, yeah, I was curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, that's something that I'll have to look into. But yeah, I haven't heard everything about that yet. But yeah, there are people just trying, new and wonderful things. Like I had a buddy of mine who was doing his PhD at University of Washington in Seattle, and at the time they were looking at scorpion venom, and for some reason there were some receptors on GBM that were very similar to like the neurons in insects that scorpion venom is specific for. So they were using that as like a carrier molecule to bring chemo into these brain cancers and things like that. And I actually think that was actually used to make pharmaceuticals and things like that after that. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool innovations that people are doing all the time. Unfortunately, we haven't made too many big strides with GBM in the last couple decades. Hasn't really moved the needle too much, maybe a couple months on average. But yeah, that's also an exciting avenue, using the polio virus. But yeah, no, I don't know enough about that yet. Unfortunately, it's something I still have to look into.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, if I ever need to be a test dummy for any study, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, cool. Well, how do people get a hold of you, and where do they come find your work?
Yeah, just look me up on Instagram, Logan Sneed _, and feel free to shoot me any message, and here to help anybody in any way I can.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, man. We'll put a link for that in the description, and go and check out Logan's work. So thanks a lot, man. It was a pleasure meeting you. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, man. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.